Hello, you are listening to Underscore, a show by the Chicago Graphic Design Club. I am your host, Christian Solorzano, and on today's episode, I speak with Chris Mora, co-founder of Bueno Days, a coffee shop and community space located in Chicago's Little Village neighborhood. And on today's episode, we get an opportunity to hear about his upbringing, his introduction to photography, and how that evolved into a passion for graphic design, visual communication, community organizing, and so many more things that he's putting all together through his projects that he's doing right now with Bueno Days and also his professional work as well. We talk about the importance of community spaces as ways of connecting with people, as ways of creating opportunities for other people to participate, for collaborations, idea exchanges, and so much more. The Chicago Graphic Design Club recently went to Bueno Days for a social hour a few weeks ago, and it's a beautiful space. If you're in the city, I would definitely encourage you to visit. So this is a great conversation. It's packed so much about being Mexican American, being born and raised in Chicago, and all of the inspiration that one is able to draw from the city. As usual, if you enjoy conversations like this, if you enjoy the show, we would really appreciate that you leave us a rating wherever you listen and that you share. It really helps us reach a bigger audience. It helps us increase the impact of these kind of conversations, which ultimately enrich our community. So thank you so much. Enjoy the conversation, and we'll talk to you soon. Good morning, Chris. How's it going?
Good morning. I'm doing great.
So I finally had the pleasure of checking out Bueno Days last weekend after hearing so much about it, and I don't know why it took me so long to visit. I think it's because for a while, like the hours were a little bit difficult for me to like
Yeah,
work around. But beautiful space. Just congratulations on the space and everything that you guys are doing for the community. So I'm really
I
impressed.
appreciate it.
Yes.
Yeah, the hours were always when something's your side project, the hours are always going to be kind of like what you can give. And for a long time, it was just month to month. But then we got into this flow state of every weekend, and yeah, that was a really nice time actually. It was a busy time, but I think there was a whole different vibe. And now that we're open 7 days, even different. So it's like a whole nother. It feels like a whole nother space.
Yeah. So I want to talk about Bueno Days, but first I want to talk about you. And your background is in graphic design. And looking through your Instagram, I saw that you're also a photographer. Like photography and storytelling, like visual storytelling, play both a big role in kind of how you see the world. So I would love to hear about what was your introduction into design, into visual storytelling, photography, and so forth. What was your
Yeah.
childhood like?
Wow. So photography was my first love, my first, I think, craft that I took seriously. It
Hmm.
really started with a point and shoot. This is 2006, and it's like high school, and I'm hanging out with friends, and all the girls carried like a little snap, like point and shoot, like cool pics camera,
Yeah.
and they'd always be taking these photos, and I'm like, let me see that camera. I have this shot of like the Sears Tower or of Lake Michigan. I just love doing those sort of things, which was a gateway into, hey, let's do some portraiture. The whole excuse now is let's meet up and take photos.
Yeah.
So throughout high school and into college, I little by little got more serious into photography. My uncle is actually a newspaper photographer. He did that for many years. He was a mechanic, and he like literally cut part of his thumb off, and he like couldn't go back to like his trade, and ended up getting a job at a spot called Monogram, which was like they would take photos of these like model cars.
Hmm.
But for him, the same thing. It was like he just kind of like was in the little area of, this is a job, where this is just like some people with a cool camera, and he took it very seriously. He became like the newspaper sports photographer for Oi magazine. So when I started getting into photography, I immediately was like, let me borrow your camera. Let me borrow that big camera.
Yeah.
It was like candy. And yeah, ultimately that work, that body of work that I did was really about documenting like my friendships in the South Side, and what later turned into a magazine during college. where I partnered up with like a DJ group, and the idea was just like, let's just interview people that we want to meet. It's this social media is a thing, but more so, it's nothing really beats what we're doing right now. Actually, it's just a
Yeah.
conversation, just like meeting up. And so photography always facilitated, honestly, just like an interesting way to spend my time and a way to meet people that I admired. Like my intro into design was because of that, because I was interviewing these creative directors for my magazine. It's, oh, hey, I have this magazine, want to interview. Really, I just wanted like a job interview, and I wanted to have an excuse to tell them about myself and what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So kind of bouncing around there from a timeline perspective. But yeah, like all of high school was just like literally using this point and shoot. And I look back at those photos and wow, they're actually like the technology is actually really great. It would be like a 2.5 megapixel camera, but
Yeah.
I think it holds up to what people are shooting right now. Then later turned into a more serious, like, hey, I want to document like all the like Latin American bands, like specifically bands that are like Mexican American. This was like, you know, after 2010, after I graduated high school. So, funny story, I ended up like shooting for this band that their drummer just like never showed up. So I never got like a band photo. And so I kept going to the practices hoping to get a band photo. And we ended up just, there's maybe like four practices in, and he hadn't showed up. Like he just always was on some other planet, basically.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, do you want to just sit on the drums? Do you want to just play the drums? And I ended up joining the band like within that year as a drummer because we just all got along so well. So photography has always been yeah, that I don't know, that thing that feels like an extension of myself. And I just love people, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think putting a camera in front of people always worked for me. And people seem to like really love a photo, right? Like a memory. And I guess I would also add that I think everybody is a photographer. It's just like your perspective of what you're documenting or what you think you are. Because at this point, everybody has like a camera on their phone.
Hmm.
And I've always had this idea that what if we had this photo club that like encouraged like all sorts of like literally photographers. It doesn't matter what kind of camera you have. Like, you are a photographer, you are an artist, you are whatever you want to be just because you say you are. And for that to be kind of like a stepping stone for like these, I think younger people who they have a really cool Visco, account or whatever. And, maybe they don't realize that it's important to have a perspective.
Yeah.
And like, I admire people who have a perspective and want to chat through it or share ideas. So that's something that I will love to do in the future. Do a little photo club at the shop actually,
Yeah.
once we have a little bit more time.
Yeah. I love that. I do definitely agree that photography is a way of just seeing the world. Like I know sometimes when I'm really into my photography mindset, even if I don't have my camera, like I'm looking, like my eye is just naturally trying to pick up compositions, and it's so great. I love it.
Have you seen those Instagram reels where it's like this guy, I think he's from Australia, and he has two perspectives. He has like his phone camera where you just kind of see like wide angle, just him walking
Hmm.
like in a city center. And then he'll have that little like yellow square that's all on all our iPhones, that's like the focus ring. But
Yeah.
he'd be like, this is what I saw. And the next shot or whatever would be like what he actually took on his camera. And it's always like mind blowing. It's always, and that's how I've always felt with the photographers that I've loved, is that we're like in the same exact space. We're in the same city
Yeah.
or whatever, right? Like we're walking the same place, and for some reason there's such a ability that people have with their perception. I don't know. It's just crazy. So this real, I think now people are starting to catch on. People are doing it more often, and I love it. I love seeing how people just like, will frame things, or
Yeah.
people get super abstract. I know people love, that blur, the bokeh blur, and
Yeah.
like I think I'm over that. I used to love that back in the day. I just wanted like a 1.2, aperture lens so I can get this crazy blur. And now I'm only shooting either on my Fuji X100F
Hmm.
or my iPhone. And it's just, I don't even care anymore. Now it's really like what you said, just composition. I'm
Yeah.
gonna snap this photo, not gonna think about it. I usually shoot for them from the hip now. And even portraiture is like that. I don't like spending too much time. I used to love the lighting and
Yeah.
and kind of all that. And I think I know it now, so it's in the back of my head. I'm sure it comes up when I want to use it, but I don't actively go for that anymore. I love the simplicity of just a rangefinder.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. So, and Chicago is such a great city with so much stuff all around us at any given point for us to shoot. So, on the topic of Chicago, what's your relationship to Chicago? I know, like you've been here for. I mean, were you born in Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay. So, what about Chicago inspires you, and more specifically, Bueno Days is in Little Village, and I know that that's like whenever I hear someone speak about Bueno Days, like they mention that it's in Little Village, and it's such a, to me, it's such a beautiful location, and and being that you're Mexican American like myself, it's always really nice to see uh, another Mexican American graphic designer that I think you and I are both the same age. So, can you maybe share some insight as to like your Mexican background and how that's kind of shaped your work and how you view the city, and most importantly, how that influences Bueno Days?
Absolutely. Yeah, born and raised in Chicago. South Side has been where I've resided since, yeah, since I was born. A lot of the beautiful things I think about our city are like scattered. And, as a South Sider, I think I spent a lot of time leaving the South Side
Hmm.
because maybe this interesting restaurant was, up north, or like coffee. It's just there's just so many reasons to leave the South Side. And I think at one point, it was actually my wife and I, literally in high school, we were like, why are there not these things in our neighborhoods?
Hmm.
What's really the issue here? And I think that that's still like the question that we ask ourselves. But as a young person, we took it upon ourselves to be like tourists in our own city. We would literally take the CTA and meet up. We had a thing every Thursday just because we had all this other activities in high school. So Thursdays were the day that like we didn't go to, boxing or chess club or whatever. And we would just meet up downtown. We'd walk around downtown. We'd be like, hey, you want to just take a bus like up north or go back south or go west? And we would just find something to do. And it was just an excuse to walk around. We didn't have any money. It was always gonna be window shopping. But I think that was like a core, like that memory and that experience is like a core piece of like why Buenos Days exists now.
Hmm.
Take the identity of Southsider, blue collar, right? I feel
Hmm.
like underdog mentality, pair it with you just love new things and you appreciate like the excitement that, I feel like the world is just always changing.
Hmm.
And then you wanting to see it in your own neighborhood. You just don't want to take the commute?
Yeah.
I think that's why Buenos Days exists. We're serving maybe a younger version of ourselves.
Yeah. I love that. And even when you were mentioning about like you in high school or like you at a young age, like having your own magazine and sort of like interviewing people or just like seeking those opportunities, do you feel like that came from like a working class mentality? Because I feel like Mexican people sometimes like we have that in us where we just get the get the job done like regardless, like there's no question about it.
Yeah, we have that spirit, right? I mean, we
Yeah.
grow up only knowing like hard work
Yeah.
is to be admired, right? Anything good happens with hard work. And I still feel that way now.
Hmm.
I think maybe at some point someone was like, oh, work hard. No, work smarter, not harder, or those sort of things.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think our culture, like the Mexican American culture, I would say, is is just there's so many levels to it. It's not a monolith. It doesn't exist as the same thing in California, the same thing in, New York. It's even not the same thing even in Chicago, right? If you're,
Hmm.
suburb Chicago, if you're South Side Chicago, you're North, it's just so different. So I think it's a very big topic, and we've been exploring it quite a lot with our project. That now I realize it more than ever that it's just like you existing and you doing what you want to do is enough. Um,
Hmm.
right? Like you are Mexican American, you have a graphic design background, you're facilitating, the underscore like podcast and magazine, like that in itself becomes Mexican American culture now.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting how we probably want to see a papel picado or like a piñata or like this like iconic thing that is Mexican American, and these things are still moving, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe like in LA we have, things that, are like cholo culture and those sort of like, lowrider like that. Those things do emanate even out here with like slow and low fest and,
Hmm.
the lowrider shows and stuff like that. But I think it's more, I really do think it's more. And ultimately, I think what we're dealing with is an identity crisis.
Yeah.
I think being from multiple places or just like identifying with multiple things, it's like this plural identity. Like we call it duality because for
Yeah.
us, it's just like these two really strong ones. And being Mexican American has always been this like jump off point to informing what we're gonna do. And I think maybe it's been recently that we're like, we are Mexican American, but we do whatever we want now. Like
Yeah.
we're not almost even limited by it has to look a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's actually why the design system of Bueno Days looks the way it does, is because actually like trying to avoid these cultural tropes that people want, maybe they want to expect to see. And and it's for good reason. I think as humans, we like to feel safe and we like to feel like we understand what's going on. I think to Mexican American culture, from my perspective now, is not that anymore. There's nostalgic moments, there's these memories that we probably all share, but it's not a monolith yet.
Hmm.
Like I'll take one of like our creations that Alma, I mean, she does so many of them, but I'll just point out this one because it's one of probably the most like latest trending one. She created a drink, a beverage called conflays, which is like cornflakes. It's the way that, we grew up saying it, and
Yeah.
it's like the non, frosted one, so there's no sugar in it. And, like our parents taught us to eat it with banana. Like you'd cut the banana up with your spoon and put it in your cornflakes. And so many people have that memory. And
Yeah.
that's why that drink was powerful, right? The
Yeah.
last thing it was a coffee. Last thing it was a latte.
Yeah.
It's an expression of this memory that we probably all share, that many of us share. And for I guess for us, that's probably the most exciting moment for Bueno. It's not the visual identity system. It's not that like we source Mexican coffee like exclusively, or we do, I don't know, we like do these spaces that we exist in Little Village and we like remind you that it's okay to be like this like beautiful duality.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And do you ever feel, I know sometimes I struggle with feeling like I'm neither Mexican enough or I'm not American enough, and I'm like in between. And when I go to Mexico, I feel like sometimes out of place in certain areas. And then when I'm here, I feel also kind of out of place. Is that something that you find yourself struggling with?
Not at all.
Not
I'm
at
just
all.
kidding. It's literally no, I'm totally joking. It's literally the opposite. It's literally that like that moment in Selena where that the father's in the car and he's telling Selena, you have to be more American than the Americans, you gotta be more Mexican than the Mexicans, and it's exhausting.
Yeah,
And that's why I say it that way. It's just funny because of course I think we all at some point probably feel that way. And
yeah,
either you pick a side,
yeah.
right? And you throw away part of who you are,
Hmm.
or you kind of exist in this like uncomfortable place where you go to Mexico and yeah, you have to kind of accept that you're a gringo, right?
Yeah.
Like you're this gabacho who doesn't speak Spanish, right? That it's
Hmm.
so obvious because you walk too fast down the street and nobody walks that fast down the street, that there's cuts of meat that you don't understand and you don't know what you're ordering. Like these sort of things are just like part of our now new Mexican American culture
Yeah,
unapologetically. So I definitely feel that. And being a person from the south side of Chicago, also like learning Spanish first and then literally forgetting it because my parents decided to stop speaking Spanish, having to relearn it, and it's now like this really broken Spanish. It's you can either be embarrassed or you can just be like, yeah, that's how it went. That's how it
yeah,
is.
yeah,
And still just move forward with your life. With my daughter now being born, it's like an important thing for us to expose her to both her cultures.
yeah,
And so we're only speaking to her in Spanish right now. But it's only working because like our or my I should say my Spanish is like good enough for a child. But as soon as she gets a little older, she's gonna probably, overtake me on how
yeah,
technical she could be, hopefully.
yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to us a little bit about so you went to UIC for graphic design. So photography came first. That's what ignited your love for visual storytelling, and then you decide to go into graphic design. What was that like? And do you find that existing again, like this duality between, well, I would think it's a duality existing between a personal project or something like Bueno Days, but then also working with clients and like in a more corporate setting. Do you find that you also have to switch back and forth between these two different environments, or do you kind of see them all as the same?
This is a great question. I think you asked two questions.
Hmm.
So the first one, it's like going to UIC for graphic design. I actually didn't go to school for graphic design.
Okay.
I was terrified of what my parents would think if I went to art school.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't, I actually learned everything I know on YouTube. And
Okay.
while I was at UIC, I was miserable because I was studying communications, which for me thought was a smart move because I can use this degree for everything. And that's just
Yeah.
kind of how it was marketed to me. So like in that vein, there's actually some I think some interesting, and I've heard it from other people, this like fear of like maybe doing something like art school because how are you going to get a job?
Yeah.
Right? Like that was very real for me. So I didn't. I went to college mostly to check the box because I felt like I was supposed to. I was told that you should go to college,
Yeah.
and if you don't, you're a failure. So I did that. It took me like 5.5 years to finish college. I just was, again, not spending my time where I wanted to. And I lived for after class. I lived for the weekends. I lived for going to work. I did not enjoy that experience. And so what I ended up doing was taking on all these side projects, and I
Mm-hmm.
built my portfolio on the things that I loved, which is like making connections with people. So that's why the magazine existed actually,
Mm-hmm.
was I wanted to have a portfolio because I knew I needed that. And the only reason why I knew I needed a portfolio is because I was going to all these events. Like at that point, it was just like I think, the annex, like Havas annex was a really, really big thing. They were throwing parties and, just meeting people, asking them how they got where they were at. I started making a checklist of like what I needed to do. I'm like, damn, I need a campaign, I need a visual identity, I need like a brand that people notice, I need all these things. And so I'm like, how am I going to get all this? There's no classroom where I can ask a teacher to put me in contact with someone that I might like. I have to be the one to go and figure this out myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it was partnering up with actually the DJ group at the time that was perfect. So we both wanted kind of a similar effect. Like we wanted to meet people that would eventually give us a job. And
Yeah.
so we met at UIC. So I'm still really happy that I went to UIC, but we met there because of UIC radio. So I joined UIC radio as a co-host of my friend, like my DJ friend's
Mm-hmm.
radio show. Afterwards, we just would honestly just talk like loads about the creative community, the music community. At that time, I was photographing a lot of bands. I actually ended up becoming part of a band and doing a whole bunch of stuff, the Mexican American, identity stuff there too. But ultimately, like that, brand identity for the band and for the magazine and all the events we threw, we were actually better at throwing events than we were at like publishing like blogs.
Yeah.
So we would do event identities with, with other friends, and all of that, that whole experience after class was everything for me.
Yeah.
It was not a straight path at all.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of this duality, like at that time I was living like kind of two lives. It was like, all right, the one I'm supposed to do where I'm not going to worry about what people think about me, like my
Yeah.
parents, family. People can say, "Oh, no, he's in college, he's good. He
Yeah.
got a
Yeah.
job, he's fine." I'm checking these boxes, but all at the same time, I'm like fulfilling like a deeper,
Yeah.
honestly, a deeper purpose, or just this necessity. There's just like this gap in my existence. It felt that
Yeah.
strongly, right? Like you're like this angsty, college kid just wanting to just be
Yeah.
somebody. And that's what it was. It was literally just who do I want to be, and hype beast, and there's this blog called Found, and all these events. That was my world at the time. I needed both
Yeah.
until honestly the moment that I didn't. And then I'm like, you know what? I learned it's actually dope to mix it all up
Yeah.
and be yourself. Don't it's cliche, right? But like you really need to be authentically you. Like
Yeah.
the only strength you have is like your actual strengths, not the ones that you kind of curate for people to
Mm-hmm.
think. My strength has always been in this, like having conversations and meeting people and like getting really excited about ideas and thinking wide, like casting a wide net and then, refining it down. And I care about people, so I always cared about people's problems. And as soon as I realized that I can like solve people's problems with creativity, I was hooked. I was like, I have to figure this out. And it
Yeah.
took me a while. It took me a while.
And did you learn this from someone, or like where did this come from? Curious.
I think I learned from looking, from watching.
Okay.
In I'm not fully sure to be honest with you. I think the earliest memory was, man, I don't want to go too early, but something that would be relevant to most people was like I was an intern, and this is after I worked in coffee for a little bit and figured out how to get, my portfolio to the right person. I got the internship, and then I saw that I wasn't wrong, that everybody in that world of advertising and marketing and creativity and studio, they lived a life, like a full life full of side projects, and they don't have to call it that. It was just
Mm,
like the thing that they have to do, the thing that they want to
yeah.
do. I was really fortunate to get this internship at a spot called MKTG.
Hmm.
Creative director at the time, Chuck Anderson, and then my design mentor, Raul. Between that group of people, like we worked with so many people that, like Kevin Kowal, who's a poet, right? Like these other designers who like typesetting for us, doing really cool stuff for Nike. And again, the world that these people existed in wasn't just, oh, that was their role. Like you didn't fully describe them by just saying what their title was on the project. There was so much more than that. And so again, yeah, being an intern, seeing all happen, I like doubled down on myself. I would make pour overs for everybody because again, I was fresh out of coffee, barista like mode, working at like a cafe down the block from the agency. And then I'm now an intern, like working on Nike and Gatorade. And what I did every morning was I'd literally show up, I'd be the first one there, and I'd start making pour overs for myself. And anybody who came in, I just felt awkward that they didn't have a coffee and I did. So I'd
Yeah.
split my pour over. And then we ended up chatting at the kitchen, and that became my like way to honestly pick people's brains
Yeah.
and learn even more. So again, me being myself turned into the best thing ever because I pretty much just made coffee for everybody, not the intern way, not the go get me coffee way. More so, I was a designer from 9 to 5, but I was there so early that I'm making people coffee and I'm getting to talk to them as a human and not as like my manager or this other thing. Yeah, honestly, I that's what I recommend most young people to do is
Yeah.
figure out the thing that's just like fully you.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big thing to ask. But for instance, borrow mine. Don't get somebody coffee, make somebody coffee. Find an excuse to share something like a pour over, which is what I did.
Yeah.
And you'll end up chatting with the most important person in the room because at that time people started like requesting and they were like, "Hey, you haven't made me a pour over. Everyone got a pour over. I've been waiting for a month. Like, what do I got to do?"
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, say less. Let's just have
Yeah.
a little coffee chat.
I love that. And on that topic, what would be your advice for just younger designers? I think right now, from my perspective and from the perspective of some of my students, there's a lot of uncertainty about our industry and jobs and AI and like just this tech revolution that's happening right before our eyes. And it's tough. And sometimes I don't know what to say because the reality is that it's like really, really challenging. Like just things are rough. So what would your words of wisdom be for someone that maybe is on this path into design, into getting into design? So that's question number one. And then question number two is for someone that's already in those positions of leadership, what can they do to kind of, to your point, to kind of nurture and to help make our community or design industry a little bit more inclusive and more, yeah, just more accepting of like younger people?
Yeah, no, these are really great questions, and I hope I get get it right, or just like to make it really simple, and I'll make it as simple as I possibly can. Design is everywhere,
Yeah.
and so it's a worthy pursuit to understand how to design something beautiful and effective and worth something to somebody.
Hmm.
We live in a country that is full of brands and full of companies that like honestly need our perspective and need
Hmm.
our skill. I like telling people that like we're we're like carpenters. Yeah, that's the thing I can compare it to. Like our trade is in pixels and lines and creating things that can like literally transport and go viral. Now, I'm not saying that because that's, this cool thing. I'm saying like you could take it very seriously, and this could be a craft that you can dedicate your entire life to. When I was younger, I didn't really realize that, but this one movie called Objectified opened up my eyes. And so I really recommend people watching this movie. It basically tells a story of Eames and Dieter Rams and like Milton Glacier, that like these people are designers. And
Yeah.
to really hone in on like your perspective and to try everything. I think I was in an Uber once, and the Uber driver was talking about his son, and he was like, "Oh, he should be a police officer." And I was like, "Oh, how old is he?" "Oh, he's just graduating high school." I'm like, "There's no way he should be a police
Yeah.
officer. He needs to try everything."
Yeah.
And I was on my way to meet up my wife and my daughter and a bunch of friends, and it was at a like this like chef-y type of event, right? Like a food culture event. I couldn't tell you that I was going to be 33 years old with the type of, the friend group I have, that is in this industry. I would have never known I would land here. So there's no way that you can tell somebody that they should be something in the future. They need to do it for themselves, and they need to try everything in the
Yeah.
process. That's kind of the whole point.
Hmm.
The whole point is that you try things. It would be so boring if things are already figured out for you. So
Yeah.
that's kind of 2 points that I feel really strongly about.
Yeah.
Definitely see the world the way it is. Design is everywhere. It's a worthy cause. It's a worthy pursuit for you to go for it, and inform your decisions by trying everything.
Yeah.
Don't think that like getting a cushy job that like pays a certain amount is all of it. There's rewards that are beyond money. And I think the best things in life are truly free. So
Hmm.
that answers that one question. I think the second one, what was it? It was
Well, I want to add something. I want to comment
sure.
on the first part because from hearing you speak, it seems like a lot of your success and opportunities have come from you kind of not waiting for permission and you just giving yourself the permission to just go do those things. And I think often what I see is, especially younger people, they'll kind of wait for someone to knock on their door and to say,
Yeah.
you can do this. And I think, obviously technology nowadays, like it allows us to do anything. Like we can take photos with our phone or we can do whatever the case may be. I think we live in a time where we're capable of doing pretty much just about anything. So,
Yeah.
and your
I th
response reminded me of that is just don't wait for someone to tell you to do something. Like just go figure it out for yourself and go learn on YouTube if you have to.
Patience is a virtue,
Yeah.
but so is just going for it.
Yeah.
You could find your own answers out there. I think anybody's perspective can be informed by something. Like to your
Hmm.
point, you can literally go out and do anything, and you can literally go out and convince yourself of anything. There's really no wrong answer.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't think I ever asked for permission or waited for permission, because the people who I would be waiting for permission, like I look at them now, and I think they kind of, this is gonna sound so mean. I feel bad saying it, but I think they stalled. I think those
Hmm.
are the people who like stopped pursuing
Hmm.
their purpose, or they stopped pursuing like with the things that made them happy. Because a lot of the people that I was surrounded by, I grew up like in the CPS world, and not to say all the teachers are this way. No, my mom's a teacher, a CPS teacher, so there's so many beautiful like teachers out there. But man, there's also a lot of teachers who I think they're just not happy, and
Yeah.
and I wonder what they actually wanted to do, because they're telling these kids what to do, and they didn't pursue it themselves for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
And that's like heartbreaking for me, because I think it's just like missing the point.
Hmm.
Yeah, you said a few other things. What was the second question though? I wanted to answer that second
So
question.
the second question was for people that are in the positions of leadership, like people
Got
that
it.
have, the power, what would be your call to action for them?
Yeah. Opportunity. Give opportunity.
Hmm.
It's a hard one to, I think, to wrap my head around, because I think it could be more, maybe there could be like a more like tactical solution. Oh, provide internships to like underprivileged, but that's been around forever. That's not the only way to do it. I think
Yeah.
opportunities look very different now. Opportunities sometimes present themselves as just showing up and existing publicly. Like I think all the people that again, the people that I look up to, like the reason why they've had the effect on me is because they went out and did a podcast, or they went out and did a show. They were available at an event like I could brush shoulders with.
Hmm.
So third spaces, they're everywhere. They're not just cafes, they're not just libraries, they're not just bars. Literally, it's the streets. And I think right now we really do need events. Like events are so important. And having an open invitation for like-minded people would be like a good, maybe like smart goal for our leaders out there.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's just give people the opportunity. Like people will show up and rise to the occasion. The ones who don't, they don't, and
Mm.
that's part of their story. I'm not in a position of leadership in my career at the moment. I'm very much I spend so much time on my company, and I think that's maybe me trying to be smart about it, is that I take the work that I do at Bueno as like my life's work. Like it's really important.
Yep.
And I blend it with the work that I do at, in advertising and in marketing, but they're not one to one, right? When I'm in my 9 to 5, like I think we're solving problems for people with like deep pockets, but what
Hmm.
I'm more interested in is not only solving problems, but just exploring them. I think I enjoy just talking ideas than I do like actually seeing the idea come to life. And that's just my truth, and maybe even a flaw, because it's I think it's one of those things that, with owning a business, it's very important to execute.
Yeah.
But I gave myself an opportunity to just roam free and do my own thing with my own project. So that might be another thing. Maybe don't wait for your leaders to like provide opportunities. It's not the only way to go about it. Actually, at the last meetup, the design meetup, it was really cool talking to these kids who just graduated, because they were talking about how they just submitted their applications for jobs and stuff like that. I'm like, that's
Hmm.
so exciting. And I'm like, how many did you apply for? He's, oh, just like one or two. And I was just considering it. I can either be like, wow, that's really great. But I also felt like there's no time to lose. You need to do more. You need to like, you need to apply. It's a numbers game. When
Yeah.
you're going through these systems of like human resources or recruiters receiving this stuff. Yeah, we're all people, but it's gone down to binary at that point. They're putting your resume through the system that like will say, oh, this person is a good candidate. Let's follow up on them.
Hmm.
Or yeah, there's not that many applications. Let's give this guy an interview. Let's see what he's about. I think it's just so much more important to go out and
Yeah.
send your resume, craft it to as many people that are worthy of your time and you think you can help. Please don't go for the I sent it, I'm gonna wait for it. I think
Yeah.
you should do follow-up emails. I think you should be conversational, and maybe even remember that the person that you're applying to, like this person who's gonna give you this job and it's this big thing, maybe don't be so desperate about it. Like there's a million people out here who can give you a job. This one, this one that you're applying for, figure out that person. Don't figure out that job. Figure out that person who you're applying to, and
Hmm.
find what makes sense for you. Have a conversation about coffee. Have a conversation about the latest book you read, the latest project you had. Say something about yourself, and really maybe even hone in on social skills more than just, the technical stuff. Because I don't think people get the job just based on their technical abilities. I think it's very important to remember that you have to work with a person. And so it's almost better for you to be a pleasure to work with than for your work
Yeah.
to speak for itself only. It's not true.
Yeah. I love that. So I want to talk a little bit about your vision for the future, which is such a big question. But with the work that you're doing with Bueno Days and the community and just everything that we've been talking about, what kind of seeds are you hoping to plant now that could lead to some future in which what do you want that future to be? What is your definition of a utopia?
Oh man. Someone's utopia is another person's dystopia. So I wouldn't call it that. I'm in a transition period,
Hmm.
Chris. I'm definitely not I think a year ago I would have told you that I want to be a better business person and
Hmm.
really hone in on creating business models that in a way to build my utopia.
Hmm.
I admire people like Edmar Lumpin in Bridgeport. I admire these, honestly, these like groups of photographers or musicians who create community. The dojo, I don't know if they still exist, but they gave us our first like really cool show. And it's this little community. It's like these worlds you build. And so I'm definitely about building worlds. But I think now that I'm a dad, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of I've changed. I've changed massively. So I don't want to give an answer that I don't feel 100% on. But before it was very much about becoming better at business because I think it's definitely like it was a goal up until a few months ago
Mm-hmm.
was to like diversify my wealth, basically my revenue, because
Mm-hmm.
it's I don't know if you've heard of like the forthcoming. I know it sounds like a crazy, funny thing, but it's this idea that the world repeats itself, like history repeats itself,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like in every, it's these four blocks of history.
Yep.
And I think the way that the world is going, we're kind of in this last one, which is usually the crisis. It's, when the Roman Empire collapsed, it's that's the kind of thing that we're in right now. And so I'm a little bit on, I want to thrive, but I also want to make sure that I'm not forgetting like how I'm surviving. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to get to survival mode, but it was very much I want to start a business not only to fulfill my pursuit of just creating fun stuff and like people.
Mm-hmm.
That's super important. There's an underlying side of me, which is I want to make sure that this thing can like always exist so that if, let's say, design jobs get cut or, the industry is in flux, it's okay. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, I'm not like my family and I are not going to be as worried as we were if we were just doing this one thing.
Yeah.
And this might become from, the Mexican American side, right? It's, it's so scary to like not have enough money to cover the essentials. And I think that's probably why I was where I was at now. I don't know. Now I think I don't have a huge inspiring future to give. I think people need to figure it out for themselves. But I definitely know for a fact that I want to see more people around doing things.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be that our space will be more open to collaborations and I think even encouraging people to like see third spaces just beyond the cafe. Because it's so crazy to get into small business. You have no idea how hard it is to keep like a space running. And so I know for a fact we all need each other. And so we ask for these third spaces. I would love to see a future, again, not my vision, just in general, where
Yeah.
we all can like honestly just exist for free. It's
Yeah.
crazy how on a weekend, you end up spending, $200 and it was just like you were just living and breathing, it felt like, but
Yeah.
it just racks up. It's getting out of hand how expensive like just a normal lifestyle, maybe like in Mexico or like abroad
Yeah.
could be. I would love to see a plaza, like a real plaza in Chicago, and it's not just downtown, like
Mm-hmm.
in our neighborhoods, like a Logan Square, or like even there's a plaza right outside of our cafe, and that gets activated. Like I want to see more of that. I
Yeah.
want people to maybe even identify more with being a tourist in their own city and like bouncing around people's neighborhood and seeing the beauty and we're such an eclectic city, and I think we have these pockets and
Mm-hmm.
everything feels kind of like the good stuff is gatekept. Just go explore, go walk around,
Yeah.
let it be more like free flowing and obviously coming from the talker, the yapper. Let's just keep talking. Let's like get excited about the future.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have a big vision, unfortunately,
Yeah.
at the moment.
Well, it sounds like you do have a big vision. I took away a big vision from what you were just talking about. And I asked this because something that I often find myself thinking and sometimes keeping me up at night is just the word legacy. And I feel, so many of us have, being that we're from Chicago and so many great things have come out of the city, I kind of think of yourself, like you, Chris, as the work that you're doing being a kind of vocation. Like there's no other way. Like it's just what you have to do, and I can hear it in your voice that you take it very seriously. So my question was like, when it comes to legacy, like what kind of legacy do you
Mhm.
want to leave behind? And I think you touched on it. Yeah.
I did touch on it, and I think it would probably be a few things, but ultimately, it really comes down to being proud of yourself, being proud of
Yeah.
who you are. And it's so cliche, but man, some of these cliches are becoming more
Yeah.
relevant in my life at the moment. What we do at the shop is, and this is something that Alma started doing when we started hiring people like besides like family members, which doesn't mean that, we didn't take it seriously then, but I think this thing we started doing was we started doing a strength finder.
Hmm.
And like, you're a barista, you're thinking, I'm just gonna make some coffee, right? This is like a simple job. It's not. There's a very delicate job, and the one note we want to do for all of our staff is that we make sure that they understand their strengths because it has a huge effect on the team. It has a huge effect on how they see themselves, and it's something that they can take with them after, they're not with us anymore. Like after they graduate us and do something else. And
Hmm.
so that legacy of like always reminding people to be like the best version of themselves, I think will like outlast any cool piece of art or just cool little moment. I it's just I think it's bigger than us. I think
Yeah.
people are happiest when they don't feel like they're comparing themselves to anybody else, that
Yeah.
they're innately themselves. So the Strength Finder, it's a book, it's a Gallup. I think it's called the Gallup Strength Finder.
Yeah.
Super cheap. It's like not that expensive. I think it's worth everybody doing it. And so I think maybe even now it's more important now because I have a child and I think about them when I think of legacy, but it's just so much it's so much bigger than just what I want to give to my daughter at the moment, right?
Yeah.
I think about my sister. My sister's 11 years younger than I am. And the reason why I bring her up is because she was our first hire at Bueno. And it was so important to have her on board. She was this like just like at the beginning, you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
this like this clay. And we were like we all wanted to mold this clay into something that we'd all be really proud of that needed to work for us, but also it worked for her.
Hmm.
And she's killing it. She's doing so good. Like she's also the reason why I finished high school. So there's already a few things, or not high school, college. So there's already a few legacy pieces that I feel like really
Yeah.
proud of because I probably wouldn't have graduated college if I didn't have this like 11-year-old at home, knowing that she was gonna have to deal with college stuff soon,
Yeah.
and knowing that I have this effect on her.
Hmm.
But again, it always comes down to I really think it comes down to figuring out your strengths and maybe choosing a more interesting life than this like maybe this like momentary happiness life that I think everybody else will like maybe say, oh, just get that career, get this thing.
Yeah.
Like happiness looks like maybe default stock dreams.
Yeah.
And I really think you find the real dream when you're just like going out and exploring and you kind of meander from that like that path.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I think the best part about everything that you just said is that it's a like a generational impact. Like you hope that the people that you inspire will pass it on and then they'll pass it on and you're just creating this link of kind of like it's another cliche but like just paying it forward. Like doing one thing and then
Yeah,
someone else does it for someone else and then eventually it's just a kind of ecosystem that you create where everyone operates under that same mentality. So I like it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Why did you start this underscore project and the
Um,
Chicago Design Club?
it was a very selfish, selfish initiative, and it was just I wanted to. I created the stuff that I wanted to see, and that was really the only reason. And similar to these conversations, I'm like, I want to talk to these people, and and that's it. And I want to learn from them. And I find that I've learned more from these kind of conversations that I have from definitely from school. Like school taught me, I feel like just 2%, but I think the real education comes from having conversations like this. And then also, I think similar to your situation, I also have a younger sibling that's 11 years younger than me, and I try to do things that hopefully inspire him and yeah, just pretty much inspire him. So,
Literally. I think that's so cool that we have that in common, actually.
yeah.
I just remembered that you said that the last time we were hanging out.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy. Not too many
Yeah.
people have that kind of massive gap because you're even your identity as a brother probably maybe shifted
Yeah.
sometimes. Maybe sometimes you're like, yeah, I'm not really your brother right now.
Yeah,
I'm more of like a
exactly.
guardian to you right now. We're not hanging out. Like, we're not hanging out together like two bros.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think man, I had another question for you actually, but it's like you're an educator too,
Hmm.
and Like how did that end up happening?
So I knew I wanted to teach when I was in college because I just I'm the kind of person that just gets obsessed with things, and graphic design has been something that I've always been into ever since I was like 11 years. Like when I first heard that word, and I remember being in Mexico and going through my family CD collection and just being like amazed at the artwork and like trying to understand why sometimes the artwork didn't look like what the music sounded. And it
Mm,
was just so confusing. I'm like, who makes these decisions? There was a Aerosmith album, and it was a cow, and it was branded with the Aerosmith logo. And in my mind, I'm like, why would someone do that to a cow? And then that just became, and then also going to Mexico, like MTV in Mexico was just way better than MTV here.
MTV3?
I don't know. I think it
Or
was that one, but it was just like it was actually like music. It was like just
mm,
music videos, and I remember just being obsessed with just the Mexican. Like if going to Mexico and going to the flea markets, the markets, and all the bootlegs, like all
yeah.
the
Oh
bootleg
my God.
CDs, and sometimes
Yes.
they would have a bootleg CD, but it was like like an alternate cover, and it would have a typo or just it would just look rare and and that just led me to wanting to be a designer. But yeah, and I think it's just been an obsession ever since. So I think I just like it.
Yeah.
That's the simple answer.
And
Well,
you're like I imagine you're a disciplined person because I also saw that you do jiu-jitsu,
I do.
right?
Yeah, that's like my
And you're a black belt.
I am a black belt, and I would be in jujitsu right now, but I'm talking to you.
I'm honored because I know how disciplined it takes you got to show up, man.
Yeah.
I did jiu-jitsu for a while until I was too injury prone and I literally just I couldn't recover from the injuries fast enough.
Okay.
But I love that
There's a
you have all these sides to you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great jujitsu school that I go to on the south side that called U Flacker Academy, and I would recommend you to go. It's a very safe school. Everyone's really nice, and this is me just shouting them out. So U Flacker
Yeah.
Academy. It's in
Sick.
Garfield Ridge.
Wow. Oh, Garfield Ridge. I think it's Garfield Park because I would go to the South Side Jiu-Jitsu, which is like a newer club that opened up like in Kenwood, just outside of Hyde Park. And that's what I was going to most recently until again, I couldn't recover from the injuries fast enough.
Okay. How long did you train for?
Not long, dude. It was always on and off. So in high school, I used to box, and the MMA thing was happening right then, right? So
Yeah.
UFC was like all the rage, and I wanted to be honestly, I wanted to fight like that, and so I
Yeah.
started doing jiu-jitsu at the same like maybe that second year of boxing, and so I've been doing jiu-jitsu since I was like in high school on and off, and it is my lack of discipline showing here because it would be like every other year I'd be like, oh, let's get back into it,
Yeah.
and then pretty much the same story. It's I had really bad knees, I really and these are just excuses, but I always
Yeah.
loved combat sports.
Yeah. And I find that there's such a strong overlap. Like I think what we do, like what you do with what you do and what I do with what I do, I think there's such a fighter mentality to these things.
I think so too. Yeah.
And I just find myself like always translating jujitsu into design and into the way that I negotiate with people and the way that I work with people. It's one to one. It's just incredible. So
It's a challenger's mentality too, right?
yeah,
Like it's like chess. I think jiu-jitsu is like a combination of
yeah,
literally playing chess, but then also like being like this really ambitious person. No
yeah.
matter what size you are, like you're either gonna you try not to use your strength, I feel like you try to use technique. And I
Yeah,
think with design, it's the same way, right? Like sometimes you could
yeah,
have this big heavy hitter design stuff and usually on a kickoff, there's like many designers doing the same thing. And so that's just how it is in our agency. Like it gets
yeah,
dwindled down to the one designer who like basically
yeah,
stays on the project.
yeah,
I think about that all the time actually. So it's very funny that you say that. And my mentor would agree with you too. He loves boxing, and so he's so good at coming up with these like little
yeah.
metaphors on the spot, and he always uses boxing as a thing.
Yeah, having someone really, really strong and heavy on top of you, if you can survive that, you can, in my opinion, you could do you could do anything, you know. So,
Fair.
so it's beautiful. But I know we're almost at time. I just have like a few just rapid fire questions.
Let's
And
go.
one of them is, being that you're from Chicago, what are your favorite Chicago spots when you're not working, when you're not thinking about work? How do you explore the city and turn your brain off?
Man, that's such a good question. As of late, I've been in my own little world,
Okay.
but when I'm not, I really enjoy honestly some of our friends' businesses. Novel Pizza is somewhere I like literally crave probably weekly.
Mhm.
And you can also get coffee there actually, which is pretty
Yeah.
fun. When it comes to honestly beverages, man, I'm a sucker for mezcal. So I
Mm.
really I love doing two things. I love either buying a really nice bottle of mezcal. Moreno Liquors is probably like my favorite selection. But if you go to the Stereo, like many of us do, they have just a wonderful selection. Man, I'm probably missing out on some really amazing things. Yesterday we went to 312 Fish Market. It's my favorite like sushi. Amazing, like I feel like they do all of it really great. Like nigiri stuff, sashimi stuff. It's always really nice. There's this Thai spot called Noble Thai that like
Mhm.
I'm obsessed with. They have this tiger cry appetizer that I get two of for my
Yeah.
dinner. Yeah, my probably my other favorite coffee spot is gonna probably be like four-letter word. So just love what they do with how they're roasting in house. Super nice. What else? I think I'm missing out on so many important people,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
that's all
Maybe
I can think of right now.
at the end of the year we'll do like we'll reach out and we'll ask you for like your top picks, how they do with the holiday shopping. This will be like holiday places to go to. So
There you go.
that could be fun.
We'll do that.
And I know music is a big part of your life. What do you listen to? What have you been listening to? What are some of your favorite
Yeah.
music
Right now,
artists?
I'm obsessed with finding a instrumental that we can use for Bueno's social media. Like I just use the same exact instrumental and kind of create like that title card in between, like in the beginning of a show, but
Mm.
make that our social media like
Okay.
strategy. So I've been listening to a ton of old school like Carlos Santana or like Malo, like even before then. A lot of the bolero stuff I'm like obsessed with. So I still love like Los Panchos and anybody who does iterations of that.
Hmm.
I was most recently practicing with a friend. He was getting ready for a show, but I was just helping him with practices on percussion, and we were doing a Buena Vista Social Club. And I'm really obsessed right now. It kind of always happens eventually. It's like I get back into the old, really old school stuff. It doesn't even matter like how things were recorded. It's like there's just a mic in the it feels that way at least.
Yeah.
There's a mic in the room and it's just like capturing like some of the imperfect moments. It's not like these amazing vocalists only. It's the energy.
Mm.
I really appreciate that what feels effortless, but probably required so much just like time and dedication and like living a certain lifestyle to get to that point. There's also like the other side of it, which is Alma and I came back from Copenhagen in October, and I still can't stop thinking about that city. And the music that's coming out of there is it's so interesting because I feel like they're really inspired by like American music that it's like it feels like it's getting filtered back to me because I'm just like hearing
Yeah.
it again. Then so I'm being reminded of some just American classics. So I think I'm an old guy now, and I just like old. I like old music.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a picture the other day on Instagram where a Blink 182 was in the oldies radio station,
That's amazing. I
which is
love that
crazy.
so much.
Yeah, just crazy.
Did you
And that,
see?
go
Did
ahead.
you see that All American Rejects did? They're starting to do house shows again.
I saw. I've never really been into them, but I did see that they were in a Chicago like backyard, like they were
Yeah.
playing somewhere in Chicago backyard.
It was Chicago. I didn't even know it was in Chicago. I think they're just like playing backyard parties now. They're like
That's
not even interested in. I think they literally say they are tired of Ticketmaster and
yeah,
these things that like just inflate prices. He's like, man, let's go back to the roots.
yeah,
I love that too.
yeah. And then the other question is, when you're working, what are some of your office must-haves? Like, what are the things in your environment that you need to be able to focus, to lock in?
Oh man, I have a few things. I always make a pour over in the morning that I keep in my little thermos. And I don't know why, but I don't like drinking it out of the thermos. So I always have like a nice little like cup, a short cup.
Hmm.
I think it kind of helps me keep track of time. Like the quicker, I sip it, I realize I'm like kind of more locked in. I've been drinking a lot of like electrolyte water. I think just bubbly electrolyte water is important for me. Headphones, I have these, I have the AirPods, but that's good for like commute and meetings, but when I'm like actually locked in, I like wearing like over ear headphones that aren't noise canceling. I like to still be in my environment. So I have these, I forget what the brand is. I think it's like Alien Audio or something like that. It's something I got a long time ago. And then lastly, I use a timer on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I do these like 15-minute design sprints. So usually if I'm like stuck, I'm just like, all right, what could I do in 15 minutes? And I think I'm considering actually buying like a physical timer now, because that's something that it's been working really well for me. I'm not much of a drawer, but I always have a notepad on me, like a gridded paper notepad.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly the cheap like Bic pens for that sort of stuff. Something too pretty and too beautiful, like the calligraphy pens or like these like fountain, like it's too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with that, I'm set.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. Big fan of everything that you're doing. And I hope that we keep the door open so that we can
Yeah.
do like it was last weekend, right? Yes, weekend when we went to
Hmm.
Bueno Days. I would love to do more things like that in the future. So thanks for opening your space to us. And I've only heard good things about from the people that went about just how great it was. So thank
Oh,
you
that's
for creating
great.
those spaces.
Of course, man. Pleasure to talk.
What a great conversation that was. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I mentioned in the beginning, if you enjoy conversations like this, we really appreciate all of your supports. So thank you for listening. And to learn more about us and what we do, visit www.chicagographicdesign.club. Thank you, and we'll talk to you later. Goodbye.